the global car industry, it used to run on a rule set decades ago. It was all about horsepower, right?
Right. Horsepower, luxury leather, that 100-year engineering pedigree.
Exactly. But if you look at the electric vehicle revolution today, well, that whole conversation, it's kind of been thrown out the window.
Completely. The new game isn't legacy, it's speed. Relentless speed. And cost. Uncompromising cost efficiency.
And the sources you shared with us, they seem to confirm, really, without a doubt, that the global center for both speed and cost, it's definitively shifted.
It really has. And for Western automakers, this isn't just a challenge. It feels more like an existential crisis, one measured in months, not years.
Okay, so let's unpack this. This is a monumental shift we're talking about. We're doing a deep dive today into why China isn't just a big market anymore.
No, it's the undisputed global epicenter for EVs.
Right. It's moved way beyond being just the factory of the world. Now it's an essential innovator and R&D partner, even for the giants, in Europe and the US.
And our mission here really is to dissect that transformation. We need to get our heads around the, frankly, shocking scale of the Chinese market first. Then analyze the technological edge they've developed, which is much more sophisticated than just churning out cars.
Okay.
And then detail these dramatic strategic pivots Western automakers are making. They're being forced into these moves just to defend their home turf.
And I think we have to start with the most critical comparison right off the bat, because it really sets the scene for everything else. It's about time.
Absolutely. Time is the currency here. The sources we've looked at suggest that developing a completely new EV platform, getting a new model to market in Europe, that takes, on average, a minimum of 36 months.
3 full years.
3 years, from the first sketch to the car sitting in the showroom.
Okay, 3 years in Europe.
Yeah.
And the standards set by the Chinese ecosystem, how does that compare?
Well, the Chinese standard starts from only 24 months.
24.
And, as we'll get into, it can actually be significantly lower in some cases.
So that's a 12-month difference right there. A full year faster.
Exactly. That gap between 36 and 24 months, that's the entire game. It's a whole product lifecycle advantage.
What does that mean in practice?
It means the Chinese market is moving, let's say conservatively, 50% faster than its established European competitors.
50% faster.
Yeah. So think about it. By the time Europe launches Generation 1 of a car, China is already finalizing the cost tweaks and performance updates for Generation 2.
That really does set the tone. We're watching a fundamental industrial revolution, and it's happening at just breakneck speed. Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1 then. The unmatched scale and speed of China's EV ecosystem.
Right, scale. We really need to ground this in the numbers first. Looking at the data, including from Renault Motion, their market dominance is, well, it's absolute. It's the foundation.
So what are the numbers telling us?
In 2023 alone, China accounted for over 60% of the more than 17 million EVs sold worldwide.
60%. When you hear a number like that, you realize, okay, this isn't just a large domestic market buying cars.
No, not at all.
That kind of volume, it creates an economy of scale, an industrial rhythm that nobody else can really match right now. It dictates where things are going globally.
Precisely. That scale is the foundation of their influence. But it's crucial to remember this dominance isn't just about having lots of people buying cars.
Okay.
That huge volume actually feeds back into their industrial processes. It becomes a symptom, you could say, of a much deeper revolution in their development efficiency.
Ah, so the volume helps them get better at making things faster and cheaper.
Exactly. It allows them to produce, innovate, and iterate faster than anyone else. Plus, that high volume, it sort of de-risks adopting new technologies. You can try things out quicker when you have that scale.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads us right to the core advantage that Western firms are now, well, desperately chasing that speed and lower cost. So if you're a legacy automaker, one of the big famous names, why are you suddenly turning to China now after, decades of pride in your own internal engineering?
The sources make the reasons brutally clear. It boils down to survival. Survival demands speed, and it demands cost efficiency.
We already talked about the time difference, 36 months versus 24 or less. That's huge. But the cost difference, you mentioned that too.
Right, and the cost differential is what makes that time difference so, well, financially devastating for the Western companies.
Tell us a bit more about that cost penalty. How much are we talking?
Okay, so mass-produced EV models coming out of European factories using their traditional engineering methods and supply chains, they cost somewhere between CNY 10,000 and CNY 20,000 more per car to produce.
10 to 20,000 yuan more.
More. Compared to cars developed within that optimized Chinese ecosystem.
And in US dollars, what's that roughly?
That's about USD 1,400 to USD 2,800 per vehicle. More expensive to make in Europe.
Wow. So nearly $3,000 per car, potentially. That's a built-in, unrecoverable financial handicap from the start.
It's an immediate, unsustainable disadvantage, especially when you're talking about high-volume segments.
Right, the mass market cars.
Exactly. Think about the profit margins on an affordable family car, like a compact SUV or a little city car. Those margins might only be in the low single digits anyway.
Okay.
So if you start with a built-in cost penalty of nearly $3,000 before you even factor in shipping or marketing, you're basically losing money on every single car compared to your Chinese competitor.
That just wipes out any home field advantage the European brands might have thought they had.
Pretty much.
If you're trying to sell an affordable family EV, you simply cannot absorb that kind of difference, that $2,800.
No way.
So it means the legacy firms, particularly those focusing on the high-volume, lower-cost stuff, the Renault, the Dacias, the entry-level VWs, they literally can't compete on price unless they fundamentally change how and where they design these vehicles.
And that change, that restructuring, it goes much deeper than just, say, finding cheaper labor somewhere. This remarkable efficiency in both time and cost, it's fueled by a deeply optimized, highly integrated ecosystem in China.
Okay, but I want to push back on that a little. When we talk about chopping a 36-month cycle down to 24 months or even less, are we talking about potentially tearing up decades of really rigorous engineering processes?
That's a fair question.
Are they risking their reputation? The quality, the durability people expect from European brands just to hit a price point. I mean, is a car developed in 16 months really built to last 15 years?
That is the absolute critical tension here, isn't it? And the sources suggest the answer lies less in cutting corners and more in a fundamental shift in how engineering is done. It's moving from sequential engineering to simultaneous software-driven engineering.
Okay, what does that mean practically? Sequential versus simultaneous?
Well, traditional Western development often works in phases, right? Design gets locked down, then engineering gets locked down, then you source suppliers, then you sort out the tooling. It's step by step.
Right, very linear.
Very linear. In the Chinese model, often the supply chain is basically co-located, or crucially, digitally integrated, right from the very first sketch.
Digitally integrated, meaning what?
Meaning component suppliers are plugged into the digital design process using things like digital twins, advanced simulation software.
Oh, okay.
So they can run simulations for sourcing parts, for prototyping, even for tooling, at the same time as the final vehicle design is being tweaked. This shaves off months of that traditional back-and-forth validation and negotiation time.
So the speed isn't necessarily about rushing the core engineering, but more about eliminating the gaps, the waiting times between steps.
Exactly. It's about eliminating those bureaucratic and logistical delays that tend to plague these huge multinational legacy automakers. So the 24-month cycle, or even faster, it's arguably less about sacrificing quality and more about maximizing efficiency through intense supply chain synchronization and these advanced digital tools.
Okay, so the why behind the speed is systemic. It's the whole ecosystem working decently. But you mentioned earlier there was a key technological factor, too, something the Chinese manufacturers really leveraged to make the cost savings possible for the mass market.
Yes, absolutely. And that transitions us perfectly into Section 2, the secret weapon, as we're calling it, the rise of LFP battery technology.
LFP, lithium iron phosphate.
That's the one. And what's truly fascinating here is that the foundation of China's economic edge in EVs, it rests on a battery chemistry that Western companies initially sort of looked down on, dismissed as inferior, really.
Let's dig into that technological shift because it feels really important. For years, the West, especially for the premium EVs, the long-range ones, they favored NMC batteries. That's nickel, manganese, cobalt.
Correct. NMC gave you that headline figure, the higher energy density, which meant, the maximum possible miles per charge. That was the focus.
The holy grail, as they used to call it. Range, range, range.
That was the mantra. But LFT batteries, which are being pioneered, refined, and crucially manufactured at truly massive scale by Chinese giants like CATL and BYD, they offer a profoundly different set of advantages, and arguably a more strategic set for the mass market.
Okay, so what makes LFP so dominant now? Why the big switch?
Primarily, it's the chemistry, and therefore the cost. NMC batteries rely on expensive metals like nickel and cobalt. Those are often mined in geopolitically sensitive areas, too.
Right, that adds risk.
Huge risk. LFP, on the other hand, as the name tells you, uses abundant iron and phosphate. Much easier to get, much more stable supply chains.
And that makes them cheaper?
Significantly cheaper. We're talking maybe 20% to 30% cheaper per kilowatt hour compared to NMC. That's a massive saving on the single most expensive part of the car.
20 to 30% cheaper. Okay. Any other advantages?
Yes, and this is critical too. They are inherently safer.
Safer. How so?
The chemical structure of LFP is just more stable, particularly thermally stable. Nickel and cobalt in NMC batteries can, under certain conditions like damage or extreme heat, react quite violently. That's where the fire risks you sometimes hear about come from.
Okay.
LFP chemistry is much more resilient. It's far more resistant to that kind of thermal runaway. So for a mass market car, where durability and safety are absolutely paramount, that stability is a huge selling point right alongside the lower cost.
I definitely remember that perception, though. LFP was seen as the budget choice, maybe second tier. Western automakers really did seem to snub it initially, didn't they? They kept arguing that the lower energy density was a fundamental flaw.
It was a fundamental flaw if your only metric was maximum possible range on a single charge.
Right. If you couldn't hit 350 miles, it wasn't considered good enough for a premium feel.
And that, looking back, proved to be probably the single most critical miscalculation of the early EV era by Western firms.
Why? Because they focused too much on the high end.
Exactly. While Western companies were chasing those last few miles of range with expensive NMC chemistries, which just kept pushing the vehicle cost higher and higher, Chinese manufacturers cleverly leveraged LFP's lower cost, and they did something revolutionary with it. They produced EVs that were fundamentally affordable, truly affordable for the average buyer, and then they used those affordable EVs to flood key export markets, specifically Europe.
So the real game changer wasn't hitting the absolute peak of battery tech, but using the right tech to unlock the economics. LFP made the price viable for ordinary people.
Absolutely, it cracked the code for mass adoption. So the shift we're seeing now, with Western firms like Ford, Tesla, and Renault all adopting LFP, it's being driven purely by this new economic reality. It's not some sudden appreciation for LFP's technical merits over NMC.
They were forced into it by the market.
They were. There's a great quote in the industry analysis we looked at. It said, Renault's adoption of LFP was less about catching up on Chinese technology and more about the desperate need for them to start catching up on the Chinese economy.
Wow. Catching up on the Chinese economy. That really frames it perfectly, doesn't it? That should almost be the headline for this whole deep dive.
It really should, because this has direct relevance to you, the listener. Think about it. The battery pack, historically, that's 30%, maybe even 40% of the entire cost of making an EV.
The single biggest chunk of the cost.
By far. It's the biggest barrier to mass EV adoption everywhere. If you want electric cars to be accessible to the average person, not just a luxury item, you have to bring that battery cost down, radically down.
Yeah, LFP is the key to doing that.
LFP is the main mechanism right now that breaks that barrier. It's what makes a sub $25,000 or sub $20,000 EV actually realistic to build and sell profitably. By choosing LFP over NMC for your mass market cars, you immediately gain that crucial cost advantage you need to survive against the wave of affordable Chinese EVs arriving in Europe and other markets.
But the economics force the technology choice, which in turn is forcing this massive, probably quite uncomfortable shift for these established companies. Let's see how that plays out in practice. Let's dive into Section 3, a specific case study looking at Renault's strategic integration of Chinese know-how.
Yeah, Renault offers perhaps the clearest and certainly one of the most openly documented examples of this strategic pivot among the big European players. Their dedicated EV division, called Ampere, is leading this charge.
And their leadership has been pretty candid about the pressure, haven't they?
Surprisingly so. Vincent Piquet, who's the CFO of Ampere, he openly acknowledged it. He said, and I'm quoting here, "The competition Chinese entering Europe forced us to rethink how we organize EV and software elements."
Forced us to rethink. That doesn't sound like a planned gradual evolution.
Not at all. He makes it clear this wasn't some elective change or a nice-to-have improvement. It was a high-stakes emergency response to a direct competitive threat.
Okay, so they recognized they needed to import this speed, this cost efficiency from the Chinese ecosystem. How do they actually do it? How do you implement that without just, dissolving your core French or European engineering teams overnight?
Well, crucially, they didn't just outsource the manufacturing, which is the old model. They essentially outsourced the process of innovation and development speed itself. They set up something called the Advanced China Development Center, ACDC, in Shanghai. That was established back in 2024. And this isn't just some liaison office for meetings. It's an active design and engineering hub.
Okay. ACDC in Shanghai.
Yeah.
What exactly are they doing there? What's its function?
Well, the initial plan, the initial mandate for ACDC was very specific. Develop cost-efficient mass-market EVs, but tailor them primarily for European regulations and what European customers expect.
Right. Adapt Chinese platforms for Europe.
Sort of, but the sources note that its role has expanded aggressively just in the past year or so. ACDC is now designing battery-powered models for other major global markets where Renault and its sister brands like Dacia compete. Think Brazil, South Korea.
So it's not just about Europe anymore.
No, Piquet was really emphatic about this. He said, "We want ACDC to work for the globe."
Okay, that's a really crucial distinction we need to highlight for the listener. Renault isn't just trying to build cars to sell in China anymore. They're actively leveraging Chinese R&D expertise to help them compete and win back in their home markets, like France and Germany, and in other key global battlegrounds.
Precisely. Piquet clarified their strategy perfectly. He said, "We're not selling these cars in China, but we're leveraging Chinese expertise to design faster, cheaper, and smarter."
So they're reverse importing the process, bringing the Chinese efficiency model back home to defend their market share against the very competitors who taught them this tough lesson.
That's exactly what it looks like. It's a fascinating strategic maneuver.
And this isn't just talk, right? This operational pivot, it's backed up by some concrete data points that show a really radical acceleration in their product pipeline. This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah, the proof is definitely in the production timelines. They demonstrate almost a halving of that traditional 36-month European timeline we talked about.
Okay, give us an example.
Take the new electric Twingo. This is meant to be Renault's entry-level, budget-friendly city EV. The sources confirm this new model was developed in just 21 months.
21 months, down from 36. That's impressive.
It really is. It's scheduled for a 2026 launch in Europe, and the target price is super aggressive, under $20,000. They're actually aiming for around 17,000.
17,000 euros. That's clearly aimed squarely at those affordable Chinese imports, like the BYD Dolphin or the MG4.
Absolutely. 21 months, a full year, maybe even 15 months faster than their traditional timeline. It's a direct, measurable response. But the acceleration didn't actually stop with the main Renault brand.
Oh. What else?
Well, Renault's budget brand, Dacia, which is known for its value focus, they set an even more aggressive internal record. They developed a new EV model in only 16 months.
16 months, from concept to ready to go.
16 months.
Wow. Compared to that 36-month European standard, that's not just faster, that's a revolution in pace.
It really is. It's like the industrial equivalent of jumping from, I don't know, horse-drawn carriages to jet engines in just one product cycle.
And it proves, doesn't it, that this Chinese R&D model, the one focused on super fast supply chain integration, rapid prototyping, digital development, it's not just something that works in China. It's exportable. And it's being successfully adopted right now by a major legacy Western automaker.
And all this speed, it's directed towards one single measurable financial goal, a goal that's basically necessary for their survival in the volume market.
Which is?
They need to reduce the production cost of their next-generation EVs by a massive 40% by 2028. 40%.
40% cost reduction by 2028 if they don't hit that kind of number.
They simply can't sustain selling EVs in high volumes against the incoming Chinese rivals. They'll be priced out of their own market.
Okay, so how on earth are they planning to achieve that? A 40% reduction is phenomenal. It has to be through some major strategic levers, presumably rooted in these Chinese partnerships we've been talking about.
Absolutely. That 40% target, it hinges primarily on two things. First, the strategic adoption of LFP batteries, which, as we discussed, dramatically cuts the material costs right away.
Right, the cheaper chemistry.
Exactly. And that includes adopting advanced LFP integration techniques like cell-to-pack technology that gets rid of the traditional battery module housing, allowing them to fit more energy into the chassis while simplifying the assembly process. Cheaper and simpler.
Okay, so LFP is pillar one. What's pillar two?
Pillar two is integrating Chinese expertise through really quite sophisticated partnership strategies. It's not just buying parts off the shelf.
Okay, like what? We saw clear evidence of design outsourcing, didn't we?
Yes. Renault actually outsourced an entire vehicle design project to a company called Shanghai Launch Automotive Technology.
Shanghai Launch. Who are they?
They're a Chinese design and engineering firm, but crucially, they have deep experience designing cars for Western brands operating in China, companies like Peugeot, Ford, Citroën. They know the Western standards, but work at Chinese speed.
So that's a clever move.
Right.
Renault keeps the final sign-off, the brand identity, the quality control. But the really time-consuming early stages, the high-speed design work, the initial engineering integration, the stuff that traditionally eats up those extra 12 months that gets handled by this faster external Shanghai firm.
They're essentially buying the efficiency of the Chinese ecosystem without having to replicate that entire complex system internally overnight. It's a shortcut to speed.
Makes sense. And what about the battery supply itself? LFP is great, but you need a guaranteed supply of it, right? And especially if it's the core of your cost reduction strategy.
Absolutely critical. So, Renault secured a vital LFP supply deal with the Chinese battery behemoth, Contemporary Amperex Technology. You probably know them as CATL.
CATL, yeah, they're massive, the biggest in the world, I think.
They are. And CATL isn't just a part supplier in this contest. They are the key enabler of this entire economic shift for Renault. Without a guaranteed high-volume supply of affordable LFP cells from CATL, that 40% cost reduction target would be completely impossible.
Okay, so they've got the design speed via outsourcing and the core cost reduction via CATL's LFP batteries. What else? You mentioned localization.
Yes, this is another fascinating layer. Beyond just securing the battery supply from China, Renault is actively executing a complex localization strategy. They're encouraging key Chinese suppliers to actually follow them to Europe and set up shop there.
Really? Like bringing the Chinese supply chain to France.
In key areas, yes. We saw the example of a joint venture they formed with a company called Month Group. Month started producing battery casings, the protective boxes for the battery packs in France back in 2023.
Why do that? Why bring a Chinese supplier to Europe instead of just importing the finished parts? Isn't that more complicated?
The rationale here is really quite strategic, and it addresses both cost and potentially geopolitical risk. Piquet, the Renault CFO, explained it. He said the logistics costs of shipping bulky components like battery casings are high. Plus, setting up local production in Europe, while initially complex, can be more efficient long-term than relying solely on imports, especially with potential tariffs or shipping disruptions.
Ah, okay, so it reduces logistics costs and makes the supply chain more resilient.
Exactly. By bringing these top-tier Chinese suppliers like Month closer to their main assembly plants in Europe, Renault cuts down on shipping times and costs, stabilizes their supply chain against global volatility, and perhaps most importantly, it fosters intense competition.
How so?
It puts these highly efficient Chinese suppliers right alongside traditional European suppliers, competing for Renault's business directly on European soil. It forces everyone to sharpen their pencils on cost and efficiency.
So it's a calculated risk. They're importing the efficiency engine of China, hoping it will help them win against Chinese competition, while trying to manage the long-term risks, like maybe becoming too dependent on Chinese tech or IP.
That seems to be the tightrope they're walking. It's a very complex calculation.
Okay, Renault's story is really compelling, and it definitely highlights the pressure, but it also confirms this is a much wider industry movement, right? Which brings us neatly to Section 4, the broader global trend and the shifting roles we're seeing.
Yes, Renault is certainly not acting in isolation here. Their strategic pivot, while maybe more openly discussed, is actually part of a mandatory sector-wide trend. All the world's most established automakers are grappling with this realization that their internal development speed just can't keep pace anymore.
Let's flesh that out with some other examples just to show the depth of this integration across the board. Volkswagen, for instance, Europe's largest automaker. They're dramatically strengthening their R&D presence in China, specifically in Hefei.
They are. But it's not just about beefing up their own R&D. They're also collaborating directly with Chinese tech companies. Big names like XPeng Motors and Horizon Robotics.
Okay, XPeng and Horizon. What specifically are VW sourcing from them? It's not just cheaper parts, presumably.
No, definitely not just parts. They're sourcing software and intelligence. XPeng, for example, is renowned for its advanced driver assistance systems, ADS, and also its very cutting-edge connectivity software, the kind of stuff Chinese consumers now absolutely demand in their cars.
Things like advanced assisted driving, sophisticated infotainment.
Exactly. VW realized it would probably take them years, maybe 5 years or more, to develop comparable systems that were market-ready and specifically optimized for the Chinese market preferences.
So by collaborating with XPeng,
They acquire that specific cutting-edge Chinese know-how, particularly particularly around software and autonomy, almost instantly. They can then integrate it much faster into their next generation VW models being sold in China and potentially elsewhere later. They're essentially buying speed in the digital domain where China is moving incredibly fast.
And these partnerships, they're extending even into the luxury segments, aren't they? I saw Jaguar Land Rover.
Yes. Jaguar Land Rover, a brand synonymous with premium British engineering, they have plans to use a technology platform from Chery, a major Chinese automaker, for new EV models.
Using a Cherry platform, that's huge. The platform is like the fundamental skeleton of the car, right?
It's absolutely epical. The heart of an EV is its platform, that skateboard architecture that holds the battery, the motors, the key control systems. Instead of JLR spending, say, 5 years and billions of dollars developing their own bespoke premium EV platform from scratch.
Which is the traditional way.
Right. They're essentially licensing or co-developing using a proven EV architecture from Chery. This instantly gives JLR access to a reliable, cost-efficient, and, crucially, rapidly developed EV base.
So JLR can then focus their resources on the bits the customer sees and touches. The premium interior, the exterior design, the brand experience.
Precisely. It lets them maintain the brand differentiation while dramatically cutting down development time and cost on the underlying engineering.
Okay, what about Stellantis? That's the other massive European-American giant, the one behind brands like Peugeot, Fiat, Chrysler, Jeep.
Stellantis is also moving fast. They're sourcing components, and in some cases, even entire vehicles, from another Chinese player called Leapmotor.
Leapmotor. Okay. Is that similar to the VW XPeng deal?
It can be. Often this seems like an immediate gap-filling strategy for Stellantis. If they suddenly realize they lack, say, an affordable, small electric SUV in a particular market segment to compete with Chinese brands.
Instead of waiting 36 months to design their own.
Exactly. Rather than wait 3 years, they can license or source a suitable model or platform from Leapmotor, maybe rebadge it slightly, and get it into their showrooms almost instantly. Again, it's a very direct transactional exchange, buying time to market.
And even the absolute top-tier German manufacturers, the ones you'd think would rely most heavily on their own internal engineering prowess, Mercedes-Benz and BMW. They've also set up huge research centers in China, right? Often with thousands of local engineers.
They have major large-scale R&D centers.
And they're not just there to tweak cars for the local Chinese market anymore, are they? That used to be the main reason.
Not anymore, no. While localization adapting cars for local tastes and regulations obviously remains important, these centers have evolved. They are now primarily R&D extraction hubs.
Extraction hubs.
Meaning they are there to constantly monitor the incredibly rapid evolution of the Chinese automotive supply chain. They need to adapt to the sheer speed of change happening on the ground there.
So they can spot the next big thing early.
Exactly. And secure access to the newest component technologies, whether that's next-generation silicon carbide inverters for better efficiency, breakthroughs in battery chemistry, or sophisticated new software for the cockpit, often before those technologies become widely available globally. They need to keep a finger directly on the fastest industrial pulse in the automotive world, which is now clearly in China.
Okay, so if we connect all these dots, Renault, VW, JLR, Stellantis, Mercedes, BMW, this industry-wide dependency, this pattern, it really confirms that China is no longer just a place to build cars cheaply.
No, not at all.
It's become the indispensable place to design cars quickly, affordably, and increasingly intelligently, especially in software.
And this highlights, I think, a permanent shift in China's global role in this industry, and potentially others. We're really witnessing an epochal change. China's transitioning from just being the factory of the world, a label it held for decades, based mostly on low labor costs,
Right.
to becoming an indispensable partner for innovation and development. It feels like Western firms realized they simply couldn't hire or train their own engineers fast enough to match the speed of the integrated Chinese process. So what do? You effectively buy access to the process itself through these partnerships and R&D centers.
Okay, that's a powerful summary of the shift. Let's try and synthesize this further. What are the absolute key takeaways for you, the listener, to carry forward from this deep dive? What's the essence of what these sources are revealing?
I think there are 3 core takeaways. First, dominance in speed and cost. It's undeniable. The Chinese EV ecosystem is fundamentally faster and cheaper. Their proven ability to develop a vehicle in 24 months or even 16, as Dacia showed, combined with that significant production cost advantage. It means Western firms basically must adopt Chinese methodologies and supply chain strategies just to stay solvent in the mass market EV game. It's become table stakes.
Okay, speed and cost is number one. What's number two?
Second, leadership in key enabling technology, specifically the LFP battery. The successful scaling and diffusion of LFP by Chinese giants like CATL and BYD, it literally forced a global economic and technological shift. The focus moved, maybe reluctantly for some, from that purely theoretical chase for maximum range towards the pragmatic, absolutely necessary goal of maximum affordability. And LFP provided the indispensable answer to that affordability challenge.
So LFP changed the economic equation.
Got it.
And the third takeaway.
Third, a new R&D partnership role. This is crucial. Western firms aren't just setting up assembly plants in China anymore like they did for decades. They're establishing these sophisticated R&D hubs, like Renault's ACDC, specifically to extract Chinese expertise.
Extract expertise in what areas specifically?
In high-speed design processes, in rapid engineering cycles, in cutting-edge software integration, and maybe most importantly, in hyper-efficient supply chain management. They are, in a very real sense, learning how to build the next generation of affordable EVs from their competitors and partners in China simultaneously.
Okay, so to sum up, faster and cheaper development, leadership in the key battery tech for affordability, and this new role as an R&D partner whose expertise needs to be extracted. That paints a pretty clear picture. So stepping back, what does this all really mean for the future of the car industry globally?
Well, it means the race for EV affordability and speed, which are the two defining factors for mass adoption, it's currently being won by an ecosystem, the Chinese ecosystem, that can deliver radical innovation in under 2 years.
And the legacy automakers.
Legacy automakers, desperate to protect their market share, their factories, their heritage brands, they're now strategically leveraging that Chinese capability. They're essentially importing Chinese speed and cost structures to defend their home markets in Europe, North America, and elsewhere. The entire global competitive dynamic has been fundamentally reset in just a few years.
Yeah, it really feels like the ground has shifted beneath everyone's feet.
And this raises, I think, a really important and maybe provocative question that you, the listener, should probably be considering as you watch this industry evolve.
Okay.
As these global automakers, we're talking giants like Renault, VW, maybe even others, soon as they increasingly adopt fundamental Chinese platforms, LFP batteries as standard, Chinese-developed software layers, and these dramatically accelerated development speeds. Will this inevitable convergence, will it eventually lead to a situation where all EVs, regardless of the brand badge on the front, have a foundational layer of Chinese-derived technology embedded deep inside?
So will the speed advantage inevitably lead to a kind of technological homogeneity across the global EV market, all originating from Chinese R&D and supply chains?
It's a possibility, isn't it? Will the differentiation shrink mainly to styling and brand image, while the core underneath becomes increasingly standardized around these fast, cost-effective Chinese solutions?
That is a fascinating and, yeah, maybe slightly unnerving thought to chew on. The sheer speed the industry demands seems to be pushing towards global standardization, and right now, that standardization appears to be setting its roots very firmly in places like Shanghai and Shenzhen.
Indeed. It really is a fundamental redrawing of the global industrial map for automotives.
Well, thank you for sharing these really fascinating sources with us. They've allowed us to take this deep dive into what is clearly one of the most significant industrial shifts happening right now this decade.
Absolutely.
And we really appreciate you relying on us to, concentrate on these sources, explain them as clearly as we can, and hopefully provide you with the examples and comparisons you need to truly grasp the depth of this transition.
Yes, and we genuinely value your continued curiosity and your support. It allows us to keep unpacking these complex global trends and try to transform all this raw information into knowledge that's actually useful and actionable for you.
So make sure you follow the deep dive wherever you get your podcasts. That way you'll never miss a critical breakdown like this one, helping you understand the context behind some of the world's most significant stories. Until next time.